Hello there, viewers and listeners. Welcome to Startup Kitchen Talk, where we discuss startup apprentices becoming master chefs. Hello from Estonia, the country where knights and castles meet digital. And my today guest it comes from a VC with the name, suggesting that if you invest well, if you invest good, the universe will repay you with nice exit. Hello there, Linda Burris from Karma VC.
Hello. Yep, sounds about right.
How come that you today had just 8 minutes for your lunch?
It was a big day. I think that 2024 definitely has started off with a bang. I think that last year was difficult for many of us in both investor world as well as startup world alike. And I think that this year has already started with a very different pace and kind of the energy is very different already. So yeah, it's keeping us busy, keeping us kind of on the roll, and I can't be happier about it. So unfortunately, the other side then comes to play, which is this 8 minutes. But therefore, I'm very, very indebted to Marianne, our teammate, who kind of makes sure that I eat and we eat as a team. So I think her role is one of the most pivotal ones in the team for sure.
You're also very dedicated because it's crazy snowing and raining outside, but you came by scooter?
Yeah, it was still late, to be fair. So, like, talking about dedication, it would have been better if I was on time. But in Tallinn, it's the best way to get around and the fastest way. So,
it's
a
also
girl's got to do what a girl's got to do. So, a scooter it is.
Do you think that investors have good karma?
It is a big question. There's different investors. And it really depends on, at the end of the day, how you define karma. The way that we kind of look at it is that your actions today will have an impact on your future. So in a way that it all kind of is connected to a certain extent. So investors probably do have karma. Is it good karma, bad karma? Probably depends on the type of investments that you're making and where you're putting your money and effort and et cetera into.
And how you act in the cap table,
for
right?
For sure. But yeah, absolutely. What you give is what you get to a certain extent.
And does Karma VC have good karma?
I hope so. I think it's always a tricky question because you're kind of asking me to tell good things about us. But I think that, if you'd ask our founders, I'd hope so. I think that that's what we try to at least do. I think we're pretty founder friendly when it matters.
Well, you have your second fund, which is it's a 100 million euros. Well,
yeah, exactly that.
So you must be doing something right.
Yeah, for sure.
And you opened the second fund in 2021, which is where you joined, right?
Yep, exactly.
Not just the Karma VC, but the VC world in general. Yep. What was the most surprising thing about it?
I guess that you kind of have this like very magical perception of looking at it from the outside in the sense that, how do they make decisions and I can't read it and how it kind of looks very exciting and mystical to a certain extent of like, what is the VC kind of decision making like? In reality, it's pretty boring. Like it's a risk assessment at the end of the day. Like you're kind of looking at different things. It's like, how risky is this? How risky is that? And so you're trying to come up with a scale and, put different things on that scale and then end up at like, is it risky or is it risky enough or is it not too risky at all? So it's much less sexy maybe kind of from the day-to-day aspect of it in the sense of what it is in essence. But for sure, like the reason why I did join because of the people. I think the industry by itself, it has people who are kind of very big thinkers, people who want to change things. And I initially studied modern history and politics. Like I thought the politics was where, you make that impact and you go and you change the world. Upon further inspection, I don't think that at the moment. So tech seems to be a very good place to actually have impact, and I stand by it today.
And then where do you stand on the investment process? Are you more like at the beginning scouting for more projects, meeting them and, risk assessing? Or are you in the portfolio management, helping startups? Or are you doing everything?
Everything. I think that today, like, I think the role or the way that we work at Karma is that everybody does everything. I guess the level of responsibility differs a little bit. Like, so where I feel, for example, very comfortable is very much this kind of relationship management side. So both on the founders, existing and new, and a lot of that. But, not having a 20-year investment background like people in Karma basically have. They've done investing for a long time. So there are things where I look to them for like guidance or kind of insights or experiences. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the team, which is that, we all play to our strengths wherever they might be. So it's not that, you can't do this until you're like this level or you've been in investing this long. Is you can do whatever feels comfortable and where you feel confident. And then when you don't, you add other people from the team to kind of support you. So if I lead the relationship with a founder, it would be weird if at a certain point I'm like, okay, so I've been building this level of trust with you, but now go and build this with someone else from the team.
Go to Patricia.
Yeah, exactly. So it, from their side, it's also very frustrating because, you keep on telling the same story so many times, building that trust with so many different people. So from my side, it makes a lot more sense to kind of maybe lead that relationship, but to be honest and open about where I'm comfortable, where I'm not. So to kind of build this relationship with them based on transparency and
so
honesty.
more like project management with some strengths aside.
For sure. And so I do a lot of my own kind of where do I think good deals will come from. So a lot of this like market analysis, which is kind of my background before this kind of VC role anyway, a lot of like research. So a lot of it is based on that. I do a lot of my own deal flow generation. So I go out and I proactively find companies which I think will be a good fit for us. And I think that, I lead my own deals. I look at it, I kind of set the strategy, and then I ask for help wherever needed. And then, yeah.
So where does the best deal flow come from?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I think, obviously, I think that we probably do have a bias towards the Baltics. This is kind of the closest to us from like a kind of proximity as well as culturally, I guess. But it's a hard question to answer because that kind of things you need to have some sort of data to back it up. I feel, but I think our first portfolio is still too young. I meant
like more from like networking or cold emailing or LinkedIn or from referrals.
I think if you look at the statistics on like where we make investments, I think it has been network, which is people who know us and say like, hey, you guys
surprise.
Yeah, you guys would really enjoy meeting this person, or this company seems to be a great fit for you guys. That I think is the most common way of us getting deals. I think increasingly so, it is kind of like going out to find those companies as well. Like, for example, for me, like I love health tech. I love everything that is like more like impact based or has like a good kind of wants to do good in the world. So for me, I go out and try to find the best companies in that field. So obviously, if you go out searching for something specific, you'll kind of turn into the quality and hone into like a market pretty well. So the quality gets pretty good in the end as well. So increasingly, kind of finding these good nuggets of or kind of more. Be lesser known deals as well.
Karma VC is a deep tech fund, and it kind of seems that the deep tech is getting the momentum lately. Like it's everywhere. Why do you think that is? Like maybe the AI boom, or why is it so popular?
I guess there's different kind of theories behind it, right? I think that the maybe the easier part or like an easy answer to this question, because there isn't a right or wrong answer, but there's some, is that I think that there were so many companies that maybe didn't need a lot of technical complexity that was solving the first wave of digitalization.
Yes.
So you kind of
like SaaS and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So at the time they probably were very strong technical solutions, but the pace of technology is growing so fast, meaning that the problems that are kind of remaining are bigger and bigger, because you kind of tick it from like the easier to solve to harder to solve. And I think that you can still do a lot of great things in these easier to solve areas. They're big markets, but I think increasingly so, there are, some things on the table that just need a little bit more time and effort to solve. On the other side, I think a lot of our kind of current trends or kind of what we see getting more investments, for example, are things that are just actual problems and they seem to be problems that deep tech can solve, like energy, for example. Like everybody's talking about energy, and it's because it's a real issue, and there's not going to be one company solving all of it because there's so many different aspects to it, right? So sometimes the problem's been set, and it's coming increasingly more and more just topical or kind of urgent to solve.
In one of your interviews, you mentioned that you focus on the verticals that somehow comes from your previous experiences, namely like HR tech or educational tech. And those verticals we don't normally associate with deep tech. Is there some like combination of those?
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Can you be educational and deep?
For sure.
For example?
So there was one company that I looked at, for example, in the UK, which was like actually 3 Cambridge PhDs, started a company which is basically like a knowledge management solution. And what they built is that every sort of content that you had, like PDF files, podcasts, videos, like any sort of files, you throw into an engine and it will put together like a curriculum for yourself to learn it. So you could take like a 7-hour course, condense that into doing it in 2.5 hours, because it also automatically personalizes, because it understands how confident you are with the material and how much quicker they can move with you or not. So this is kind of bringing this, because we talk about personalized learning with the context of like schools a lot, but we lack the tools to actually implement it. And the same thing kind of happens in kind of when you're an adult. And so again, like a lot of the tools in edtech that we see are kind of solving the problems we've had for a long time, but I think that none have maybe made the impact, maybe like Duolingo and things like that. But that's again like the first wave of digitalization. But I think now, how do you truly make education something that's interactive? And AI can help with that a lot. And automation already did, but now I think AI is definitely going to do that. And same thing with HR tech. I think that having been in executive search, seeing how much data do you need to actually make good decisions in the context of one company or one role to make the best possible decision, the amount of data that you need in order to do that on a continuous basis, make good choices and save money and make a company more efficient, those tools are not easy to build. Because, the kind of the knowledge that needs to go inside it is just so vast. And then you need to filter it the right way and index it the right way and things like that. So I think there's so much space in each of those verticals. But what was interesting was that, and for example, in the case of this edtech, many funds, deep tech funds, wouldn't even look at it because it was called edtech. Yeah, and that was for me like the biggest shock. Again, like I come from the outside of the industry, so I get the scaling question to a certain extent. Edtech is harder to scale because it's a more fragmented market, but they didn't even sell to schools.
They could just say we are AI startup though.
Yeah,
that would probably get
I think it was somewhere in there. But maybe it wasn't the first thing. So maybe that's where they went wrong. Yeah, maybe you're right.
And maybe they could do
pro tips on marketing.
Sure. And maybe they could do the podcast preparation as well. Both Karma and Deep Tech, and also punch you in the face as well. What is the biggest, stupidest thing that you've seen in the field?
I don't think that there are stupid things. Like, I think that, I think I'm very open-minded about, people like different things. Like, for example, in entertainment, like I've seen a bunch of the things that I'm like kind of looking at. It's like, okay, who's going to like this? Who's going to use this? Or kind of in different spaces. So there are a lot of things that I don't get. I try to kind of not pass judgment necessarily.
But if you've seen, did you ever shut down a pitch after just one slide? We are now in a bar, so let's say, so we create a VR for bartenders to learn how to shake their cocktails. Would you be like, yeah, sure, I really want to spend another half an hour looking at this?
I've probably seen something like this. Actually, now you're saying it, but
so sorry.
Because it was like a VR company that was doing like job training. No, not for bartending, but like for like training for jobs. But like different jobs. And so they had some already built out in like a roadmap. So I'm sure bartending could have been somewhere in there. But no, again, like I think that like, when Airbnb first started, people many fans passed it because it just seemed such a ridiculous idea that, who's going to want to sleep on an air mattress in your, like in your apartment? Like no one's going to come. Like what the hell? But like now it's one of like the most like best tech case studies that everybody's kind of looking at, and they got investors and they're like a great company. So from that perspective, like I'm sure I've seen my fair share of like what the hell is this as a first like thing, but I try to kind of get to like some sort of a logic. I think that I'm more disappointed about like the kind of bad execution. Where you can see there's no effort put into the slides. Like no idea is a bad idea, but it's just more to the point as like it's lazy. Right? Like I haven't really done the calculations. I haven't really done my market research. Like I don't really know what my competitive advantage is. I don't really understand the market that I'm entering into. And those are the ones maybe that I close faster. I'm like...
Because there are just like generic sentences. Yeah, we want to innovate the world, but then there's no essence.
There's nothing new. There's nothing kind of like, oh, okay, I can see that there's like an angle in this, or so that there's something different in this. And sometimes it's, you know, some pitches I just don't look at more because of the fact that they didn't just fit the fund thesis, right? Like I can tell already, like from the first slide, that there's probably a lot of buzzwords there, and then one of the first slide, which talks about the product, I can already tell that there's probably good productization somewhere in there, but it's just not deep tech. So I think those kind of things as well. But like, yeah, I think I've looked at my fair share of like innovative dating, and I'm like, okay, what did you come up with now, or like pet tech, or like.
There's
like
a lot of money in the pet tech.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But this is where the place where I haven't seen any deep tech yet. So if anyone has any pet tech, which is deep tech, like let me know.
I definitely will. There must be some machine learning, how to train your dog with AI. Yeah, definitely. That's gonna come.
I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah, we put this. Your previous experience before joining VC was can I say headhunting? Is that right? Yeah. Some C-level people in London. So you have really fresh perspective of an outsider, both in the field, you know, of the VC, but both and geographically speaking as well. So what do you think? It's so fresh, so amazing about Estonia that they're so successful at raising unicorns and other successful companies?
Yeah. Again, I wish I had a simple answer for this, but I have an answer for this. I don't know if it's the right one. But I guess for me, it's community. That's the biggest difference. I think London is huge, and you can find like a plethora of people. You can build communities there because there's so many people there. But I think that you have limited access with regards to like levels of people. And you can build communities around similar levels to yourself. You can maybe reach a bit like more experienced than you, etc. But then at a certain point, because you have so many people, you know, the people at the top cannot allocate their time to everybody who kind of want to be on their level, who want access to them, their time, their experiences, yada, yada, yada. So they need to be selective in who they meet with or how they spend their time. I think what's been exceptionally great in Estonia is that all of the people who have had some success, you know, the founders of Skype, of Pipedrive, of Wise, of, you know, all of the different unicorns, they put their effort, money, and education experience back into the ecosystem. Yeah. And it's a huge player. And if you kind of look at around Eastern Europe, you can see similar things coming from countries that have had their initial kind of like success stories, and then start contributing as well. Like, firstly, it works as an inspiration to a certain extent. People are like, oh my God, like I didn't realize you can build unicorns out of Estonia. Like, I want to do something meaningful. So I think that that's something that I could try because it's been done before. So it's easier to visualize something that's already there. But also on the other side, definitely this experience and money and et cetera helps.
There's the stereotypes of CEE founders or Eastern European founders that they aspired to be the kingfish of the pond, not really aiming for the ocean from day one. Do you think this is true about Estonian founders as well? Like that they aren't thinking globally, or is it different in Estonia than the rest of the Eastern countries?
I don't know. Like, I think what I've seen personally thus far is that I think because of the fact that the kind of European countries overall, and not all, but many, need to start thinking about solutions and markets beyond their own. it usually sets them up well for international expansion, because if you can do country by country in Europe where there's different languages, different cultures, different setups of different industries, so there's so much variety, it usually sets you up well. If you can scale through this, you can scale through anything, right? So I think Estonia definitely has that side. I think all the founders like know that, from day one, we need to kind of be global. And I think in our kind of portfolio as well, like a lot of the solutions that, we've invested in and the companies we've invested in, they have solutions where you can use and that, top level in many different markets. I think that there are differences maybe in the larger economy countries, but I don't think that there's a difference here between CEE and non-CEE or Western Europe, because the same thing happens in France or Germany, where, your local market is just so big that you can grow to easily like 2 million revenue.
You can be unicorns just on your home market, right?
Maybe not unicorns, but like a very strong company. Yeah. So you can easily get to like, 2 or even like 5 million in revenues in your own like just market. So, you're kind of exhaust that until you can, because it's easy, and you can see easy is great and you're growing and yada, but also then you try to kind of see, can they like expand elsewhere, and there's very little proof of that. So therefore I think as an investor you tend to be a bit more skeptical about their global scaling capabilities. So I think that works in regardless of the region, and more like, same thing happens in Turkey, because Turkey by itself, for example, is a huge gap, but very different from like a cultural or kind of setup of country than for example, like Romania, which is also a large country, or Poland, right? So yeah, I think it's more to do with the size of the market.
Of the country, yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned Skype, and you have some investors that were ex-Skype or Skype engineers.
Yep.
And like, we also said that, how helpful it is for the community that they come back and they put their education, they put their money back into the ecosystem. Why do you think they do it? Why don't they, use the money to go buy houses, cars, and jet skis?
I guess that's my just speculation. Obviously, I haven't gone through all of them, and so like,
not
hey,
yet.
Why are you putting that money in? I guess I think. Firstly, I think they're genuinely nice people. Firstly, so I think that
positive.
I've met many of them, right? So I think a lot of these people are genuinely just nice people, and they don't need all of this glitz and glam in order to live a fulfilling life. So I think that Estonia has a very high quality of life anyway. Like there was just recently a study done, and therefore like I think that they're very realistic as people and modest. They're just generally nice people who live normal lives. And, obviously they kind of have probably wealth and asset managers who help them manage their wealth, and they're not putting all of it back into the ecosystem. So there's probably like a part that they allocate to it. But I think that they also love technology. I think this is something that I've seen, again, that seems to be a pattern throughout all of them. They love great technology, and they probably recognize themselves in the younger entrepreneurs, and they go like, I wish I had someone who believed in me during that time, and they want to support and help a great idea or a great founder. So yeah, I think it's like a mix of things, but ultimately, if
genuinely nice.
Tech, yeah,
that's a good karma there.
yeah, but like exactly, but also you can also see that their intention probably is to support the ecosystem, and now the ecosystem has been growing, and probably for them as well, I'm pretty kind of like they live in the same country that's now prospering from the side of technology, and hopefully because of that their children or the next generation will benefit from that, being able, so building companies and scaling them will be easier, and Estonia as a country will do better. So actually they're investing into their own and their children's futures as well, which I think all of them, again, like many of them have gone towards like businesses that are kind of looking towards the future and sustainability and impact and all of those kind of things. So again, it seems to be showing that future is a big thing for all of them as well, or many of them.
You mentioned that you mainly focus on Baltics, but you also said in one of the interviews that you have like a one flight rule, that you invest in somewhere that you can take one flight in and don't have to transit to another.
I think there's more wishful thinking nowadays. Estonian flight connections are pretty bad.
Yeah. And why is it? Like, why do you need that face-to-face meetings?
I think that you don't need it. Let me preface it. You don't need it. Like there's not
because
something.
the Skype founders or Skype engineers, isn't that like an oxymoronish that you need a face-to-face communication and you have Skype on board?
Yeah. Yeah, but like the irony of that is that we live in the same country as them, so we still get face-to-face time with them. But I think that there is a certain, I don't want to call it magic, but in lack of a better word, I'll call it that. That happens when people are in the same space.
Like vibe.
Yeah. And I think that the level of trust that you build with people, whether it be founders, whether it be board members, whoever it might be, like just entrepreneurs or executives, you do build up a different level of trust with people if you spend time with them in the same room and you learn more about them, which I think is very important when you're running a company together, this trust. And one of the things that we are very bullish on, and we talked about in our kind of entrepreneur meetings and founder meetings, which is we want partnership with you. And what does partnership look like? That varies with every founder a little bit, because, the same with like relationships, like no one relationship you have is the same, but you have different levels of trust or different ways of communicating with each other. But I think that partnership, that trust is at the core of what we, how we work and what we look for. And as such, it's so much easier to do if you're, doing that face to face and you have a strong basis on what to do with it. And an example that I can bring is that if you have really difficult topics to discuss with the founder, like maybe they're very set on a certain, this is a principle that I will not break, but maybe you have an inkling that might be hurting the company. All of us have, choices to make, and there's so many of them, but maybe there's a certain one that you need a lot of time and effort to actually talk through. So in order for these people relationships to be good and not damage them, you need to have this level of trust that, hey, trust me that I'm coming from a good place. I'm not trying to attack you. Let's have a good kind of conversation about this. And you can, talk so much better and deeper and have so much more kind of well-meaning criticism or constructive criticism towards a company or a founder or whatever question you have in mind, if that's built on trust. So it's not a must, but it's definitely a very, very, very useful thing to do, especially in the way that we like to work. And it might not be for everybody, but for us, it seems to be working pretty well thus far.
Does this trust building power comes from your previous job? When you had to persuade somebody to take a job in the mountains and working for some random company, as you mentioned before we start shooting.
Yeah, for sure. Ultimately, it's understanding people's motivations. Yeah. It's understanding their values. It's understanding what they want to do and kind of how does that fit with a certain opportunity. So I think one part is definitely this assessment part. The second part is you think that it's a good fit, but how do you communicate that fit to someone and make them see what you see? And then allow them to make the decision at the end of the day, right? Because, I'm not trying to convince somebody to make one of the biggest decisions of their lives based on my gut feeling, right? I just want to make sure that they have all the information needed to make their decisions. So I think that definitely you do see how people make decisions, how they kind of interact and how to have a good constructive conversation. So in my case, for sure, I think it definitely helped. But I think that, that's partly the reason why I wanted to join Karma, because I saw that there was kind of this mutual respect of this, because the partners, I think they embody this probably even better than I do, because I think that seeing kind of day in, day out the type of conversations that these companies go through, a lot of decisions, etc. I think this trust has helped the partners in so many of the discussions, and ultimately the founders will still do, and the entrepreneurs and executives will do what they want to do, but making sure that they have again all the information that we're able to kind of provide them, that they take it seriously, consider it, and then they make the best decision off that. That's the best we can do as investors.
Yeah, but it still seems like a pretty friendly approach. Have you ever witnessed this VC predatory behavior, pushing for exits and big returns shortly, even though the founders doesn't want to?
For sure. And you know, that's in every industry. People have different preferences, different ways of working, different goals, different values, etc. I think that, you know, ultimately what the founders do is they do try to balance out, you know, different perspectives. Like we have, like, for example, very like strong and pushy American investors, you know, very like, you know, different mindset to us. And I think that we appreciate
like as a
that.
co-investor, you mean?
Yeah. And we really appreciate that because they're probably strong in areas where we're not. Right? It's
like a good cup, bad cup.
Kind of. But that's what life is all about, right? Like having balance and having diversity in all levels of life, right? So I think that, you know, obviously you want to make sure that there's enough overlap in values that you can, it doesn't like shut down the company in a way because we can't agree on anything. We need to agree on like the majority of things. And as long as we do that, then it's okay that we don't agree on everything. Ultimately, that's what you want. You want debate, you want discussion, you want different perspectives on a board, and you want the founder to then kind of take all that information and take it away with them. And ultimately, we have controls for that, right? So, you know, not one investor should be able to kind of dictate the kind of the direction of the company or what we can do. So we have elements in place for that. So good checks and balances and good corporate governance.
Do you have that inside your VC as well? Because there's 7 of you. There's a very diverse team.
Yep.
Do you disagree with each other?
Yeah.
and a polite fighting or impolite fighting?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm probably the most kind of like vocal about my disagreements oftentimes. But I think that that's very well balanced out by the calmer members of the team in the sense that people who are kind of more like, okay, let's take a step back now. Because, well, I'm very passionate about my work, right? So, you know, I'll take a step back and I'll kind of take the hint from that perspective. But for sure, there's disagreements. And I think that's good. I think that you have a lot of experience in the team, you know, like, you know, we have people who work for corporates, people who've kind of made investments, kind of gone through many of these like kind of ups and downs of the market cycles and things like that, seen many of these like, you know, oh, social media is the thing where you make money. Oh, no, maybe not anymore. Oh, and up and down. So they've seen so many ways of these technologies. So they're a bit more maybe skeptical towards these new trends or things that are coming up. Like, is this real? Or is it kind of just something that will come and go? But also then we have the kind of the younger generation, and this is actually built into our decision-making mechanics, that the younger generation can have a voice as well in those discussions, and we're part of this decision-making, meaning that, you know, we're much less likely to kind of miss out on these kind of things that are kind of real and up and coming. So there needs to be a certain level of consensus within the team, but it doesn't have to be kind of in the certain parts. So this diversity of kind of backgrounds and people definitely, I think, helps with good decision making, especially for the type of fund that we are.
And except for the respectable disagreeing, what does the diversity bring to the table? Because you have a lot of you have plenty of diversity in your team, but there's only 7 of you, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think that, like, firstly, it's the perspectives, right? So, like, I'm huge on, like, everything that has to do with like social media or news or media or overall communication and people and things like that. And sometimes I get so deep into it that I lose the big picture, right?
All right.
And then you have the rest of the team who can kind of say like, hey, like let's just ask them the basic questions. Let's see kind of that your excitement, what is it founded on? And you kind of then start rationalizing, and sometimes they go like, yeah, you see, I was still right. And they're like, okay, yeah, now we see why you're excited. In other cases, they're like, Linda, do you now see why we don't believe you? And I'm like, yeah, shit, sorry. Like, I get it now, sorry.
And how easy is it to persuade you? Like, I'll take a look at the big picture.
Again, like, it takes trust in the team.
Yes.
And I think in the beginning it was difficult because, like, I hadn't worked with the team for so long. I hadn't been in VC for very long. So, you know, in very, like, you know, I don't know if it's a me thing or overall thing, but you kind of go like, oh, I know what's like, this is going to be a great company. I know, right? Like, I've got this gut feeling. But then as you start exploring it, you're like, damn, maybe like the gut feeling was just initial excitement because the founder was really cool and really good at like presenting it, right? So I think that, over time you kind of get to see where those questions are coming from. You kind of get to see more companies and then you see, you think that, okay, I've got a better data set now, but they've got an even bigger data set. And I think it's also the way that you communicate your skepticism to a certain extent.
Oh, so instead of like, this is shit, you can say, oh, well, I have my doubts. You mean that?
Yeah. It's like, hey, like, I don't really understand why you're so excited about this part. Can you explain to me? And I'm like, I'll come back to you. but like, I get humbled a lot. I do. And I appreciate it. And I think that, again, this comes back to this level of trust where like, I don't blame them for being skeptical about my excitement, but it's vice versa as well. Sometimes, like, because everybody has those moments where, I think I found the next unicorn, and then you start presenting to the team and the team starts asking questions, and then you kind of go like, why did they ruin this for me? But then you kind of realize there was like...
And are you ever on the other side? Are you ever the skeptic one?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, I'm very much people-driven, and I know that, right? So I know that I get excited about people, by strong founders, by, like, their characters, and, like, I get an energy, and I kind of, like, vibe with them very strongly. And then I start kind of building around this like fact base around it, like everything that they said, does it make sense? Does it have like data backing it up? So I go from like getting really excited in the beginning to then like founding it. Whereas like, I think that, the other members of the team do like sometimes the opposite, where like they start with the foundation is solid, and then they kind of build their kind of way up to the excitement in the end.
To say that pyramid has such a bad reputation, because this could be called VC pyramid, but but no scheme.
No scheme.
Tell me, there's 7 of you.
Yep.
Still crazy. How many pitch deck do you see per month, approximately?
I honestly have no clue.
Like,
because
are we in tens, thousands, hundreds?
Somewhere in the hundreds, I think.
I thought somewhere in the hundreds.
Because there's like a certain amount of these like cold decks that you see that you never don't meet with people, and you get them. Sometimes it's like, the outreach with you. So I'm probably in the hundreds, I would say.
And have you ever invested in a cold deck, like that somebody just landed in your inbox and you were like, yeah, let's meet this founder, and then invest in it?
No.
Yeah, so it's all goes down to the community and the face-to-face.
It isn't that, I'm very open, again, like to the point of which that like, hey, great companies can come from anywhere. It's like, I think the Ratatouille approach. Like, where there's like...
Ratatouille?
Yeah, do you know how like the chef...
rat?
Do you know how the chef Cousteau says that anybody can be a great chef?
Oh, yeah, that is true.
And
even the
like,
rat.
Exactly. And then, how in the end of the movie, they're like, it's not that like everybody can do it, but a great chef can come from anywhere. So I'm very much of the same thinking with regards to founders. And like, so
it's an amazing metaphor. Thank you.
Yeah, because I love Ratatouille. So I'm just like taking every chance to say it. So I think that like that's a really beautiful way to see it, and I agree with it like wholeheartedly. I think that great founders can come from anywhere, great companies can come from anywhere, but statistically speaking, majority of great founders or great companies, you're not probably the first person to speak with them. Mm-hmm. You're probably not the first investor they'll reach out to. So the only way or kind of the way that would make sense for cold kind of meetings is that, if the founders really put you in the top 10 of investors, and sometimes you're in there and then that happens. But I think majority of the time, great people have met them before and have kind of said, hey, you should speak to them. So I think there's definitely that element that comes to play. Great people are usually very well networked and referred.
Yeah, to continue that Ratatouille metaphor, sometimes you need a good co-pilot.
Yeah.
It's something that I just created. Just very shortly, because I've also seen you talking about space tech.
Yep.
Would you, it's, even though the deep space, it's the opposite way, would you consider to invest in it?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And so my kind of space tech era was more kind of maybe prominent when in my last role, because we worked very closely with the UK space industry. My boss was very well networked and very well known within that. So we worked with many like rocket ship and satellite and more on the hardware side, I would say, some software and kind of Earth observation stuff as well. But now at like Karma, I think that space is an interesting kind of area to invest in because it's very particular, because it's all like hardware enabled, but that hardware is kind of very small market. The majority of that is owned by...
And it's not Karma, right? Because Karma only invest in software. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that like software innovation using like satellite data is very common.
Downstream. Yeah.
But there's a question of like, where do you build that deep tech element into it? Yes. If you're using data that someone else can access as well, it's not proprietary. So it becomes a little bit more difficult. But definitely there's companies, for example, in agriculture, in insurance, in just overall like analytics that are doing great things that are in the space tech industry. But and increasingly maybe defense as well, with everything that's going on in the world. But I think defense is also like difficult for many VCs to invest in. Because
do you think that this dual use approach is slightly changing? That the approach like no dual use, ever invest? Do you think that this will change now with the situation?
I think that it really depends on the company.
Yeah.
Because and to preface this, I can say that we've looked at quite a few companies that have dual use. We have a cybersecurity defense startup in our kind of portfolio as well. So from that perspective, you never say never, and I think that definitely at the moment you can see that there is a need for that, and people are kind of looking for that more and more. I think increasingly in the team we've been talking about how to innovate peace as a kind of like a counter to defense tech. If you're asking me what we've come up with, not much. It comes out that it's probably harder to innovate.
It's great as a slogan, man. It's amazing. Yeah, we innovate peace.
Yeah. So how do you ensure accountability and transparency in democracy in the world, and etc. So how do you build the world on the right foundations, and how you can support that with technology? So if anyone has any great ideas, then let me know.
Deep tech usually solves really big issues, big problems, or aims to. Yeah. What do you think is the next big thing?
There are many.
If you should pick one, is it the climate?
The obvious one is health.
Yeah, health, not climate health. Yeah.
I think.
But they are connected.
Yeah, for sure. I think that climate. I think we're in the baby issues of it. I think that there's so many funds now that are kind of investing in climate. I think that there are so many little things that kind of happen with it that contribute to it. I think that this big mental shift in corporations and in governments, like it is slowly happening. We're saying that it's important. We're not really doing that. I think that, capitalism is still alive and well. Consumerism is still alive and well. So we have still some pretty big issues that are less to do with mitigating the problems that we have and more changing the way that we think about the world. So I think that,
behave.
Yeah. So there's still some big chunks of kind of innovation that we need to figure out, because I also really appreciated how hard it is to kind of restructure these big cruise ships that are these massive companies. So it's not to kind of criticize them without like basis, but to say that there's still a lot we can do in the way that we live today. I think healthcare, what is really great about it is that the thinking behind healthcare and using technology in healthcare is changing a lot. I think that partly it's to do with the pressures of the healthcare systems across the globe. I don't show me a country where they don't have a problem with being short on staff or money or things like that. So I think they are very, very big problems to solve. Also with aging population, that's something that's like a continuous question as well. Like, how do we keep on funding with an aging population, the kind of the healthcare system? So I think that looking at the money going into kind of different biotech and health tech and med tech, I have, very, very high hopes for kind of changing the way that our kind of healthcare systems work.
Including biotech, including pharmaceutical.
Yeah, that's all kind of a big part of it. And I think that, the companies that I've been seeing recently, they're still in very, very early stages. Like one of the companies that I saw recently is basically working on a case that, let's say, like in 10 years' time, if you go to a doctor and you have something wrong with your brain, in the same setup, you do a test. The computer does the diagnosis, It understands what kind of medicines could work for you and understands your genetics and all of your background and personalizes a medicine for your specific illness for you personally. And they're already like, making advancements on that technology and kind of, building that data set, and then they have their first like preclinical trial drug that they've kind of come up with. So from that perspective, that's pretty fucking cool.
And it's really cool that in Estonia here you have all the data needing, to do so. And in our country we still fill the papers with our medical history, so that will be difficult. Yeah. My final question is because it's Startup Kitchen, so I wanted to ask, what is the weirdest food that you've ever eaten? The most bizarre thing?
That's an interesting question. I think majority of Estonian food for many people would be weird. Like Estonian national dish is a thing called kama, which is
kind of scared.
Yeah, you know how when the milk goes sour, it gets like clumpy.
Yes.
So that's the basis of the food, raw. And you put into it like grounded up different flours or wheats and whole grains. So like pea flour, oat flour.
Sounds healthy.
Etc. And you just put them together, you mix them and you eat it. That's it. Sour milk and some flour. So I think that like when I describe it to people, like it's weird.
It is pretty weird. Yeah.
But it's delicious.
It is delicious. Apart from that, the weirdest
food?
I
don't know. Yeah. That's the thing. Like I feel like a lot of the foods that you think initially that are weird in the end up not being very weird.
Yeah.
I used to eat insects when I was younger.
Yeah. No, you don't?
No.
With protein though.
Yeah, I know. But like it's more that I don't see insects in my daily life as much anymore.
Thank you, Linda, so much for being with us today and making time for us in your super busy schedule. Please ride safe.
Yes, will do. Thank you.
Thank you.